how to design a food forest or native pollinator garden. Now, this is within the context of a video series on how to start and run a food forest pollinator garden installation business. So this video is not a comprehensive video on how to design a food forest, but we're going to cover within this context how you can go about this. Of course, if you want to fully understand how to design a food forest, I'd recommend books like Edible Forest Gardens, Permaculture, and things along those lines. So in this context, there are two ways you can go about designing these gardens. Number one, and let's just get right into it. Let's get into it. Number one, you can really understand food forest design at a very deep level. Either way, you're going to need to understand the ecology of food forest design. But let's say you understand it at the deepest levels. You really know what you're doing. You can show up to a plant nursery, to a place where they're selling native plants, and pick out different plants that fill all the niches in an ecosystem and go design something on the fly. So that's a key thing. Either way, you're going to need to understand that in food forestry, there are about 7, if you follow permaculture, there are however many you want to say, different categories, different ecological niches, different parts in the forest ecosystem that plants can fill. And you're going to want to, at the same time, have plants that are doing all these different tasks like keeping pests away, attracting pollinators, and things like that, building healthy soil. So there's all these different roles that you need to fill within a food forest system. And you need to understand the ecology of a food forest system, of a forest ecosystem, one way or another, in order to do this. I'm getting a little hot in here. So either way, you're going to want to understand that. If you understand it at a really deep level, you can have this skill set where you just go design something on the fly. The bigger the project you're doing, and before we get into the second way, we're going to talk about this. The bigger the project, the more you're going to need to apply these principles, the more you're going to need to understand these principles. So if it's a really small garden, let's say it's a couple hundred square feet, 100 square feet, you can just design a guild. And we're going to talk about guilds in the next option, the second option. Either way, on a small scale, you're actually very limited in how well you can design an entire ecosystem that fully sustains itself, where all these niches are filled, all these roles are filled within the ecosystem. At a scale of 1 acre, of even a quarter acre, you're biting off a much bigger task. You really want to do things well. You're going to want to put a lot more work into design one way or another, regardless of how you're going about doing it. So on a smaller scale, even with less knowledge, you can probably just go to a store and design something on the fly. It just might take some time there, but perhaps less time than doing it the other way. So before we get into the other way, which is going to be just a lot more to picking out things ahead of time and then going and finding those plants, the advantage of this way of doing things is that you can use what plants are available. So if you don't know what plants are available, it can be really hard. You go design this beautiful garden on paper and you're like, where's this plant? Where's that plant? You're like, oh, look at this plant in the shop. Too bad it's not in my design. Oh, I guess I could fit it in there. But like really, it's really nice to be able to go to one shop that has good prices and pick out everything you can. Maybe there's a couple things you need to get elsewhere. You're like, oh, something that fills this role, something that fills that role. But oftentimes, you can go to 2 shops, and that's what I've been doing a lot this year for these smaller projects. Just go to 2 shops, get everything you need, design it on the fly, put a little bit of work into thinking about how that's going to happen. As you're picking out the plants, you're like, oh, this will fill that role, this will fill that role. This is a good way to practice your food forestry skills. But if you're not strict and disciplined about actually doing things properly, you're not going to do things properly. So don't fuck this up. Do things properly and know what you're doing. If you don't think you can pull that off, what you're going to want to do, and this is the other option, is you're going to want to, number one, create a spreadsheet. So find your local area where you live and make a list of all the different plants, perhaps native plants, perhaps fruiting, medicinal, other plants that you might want to use in a food forest. At this point, you could use AI to do this, and you could even use AI not just to come up with the list, but to run the spreadsheet for you. So this is something that could theoretically have taken you a lot of time that you can get done really quickly and then verify that information yourself instead of just having to come up with it all. On the other hand, you could just not verify that information and just say, fuck it. I don't know what's better. I would say verify it. But I don't know, you could put it in one AI, put it in another AI, say, hey, what information here is just flat wrong? What did the AI mess up? Maybe have that double check it. Maybe put it in a third one. I don't know. Do it how you want to do it. So you got your spreadsheet, right? And in this spreadsheet, while you're here, you're going to want to put a lot of information for yourself, how to plant these plants, how to make sure they do well, what kind of systems they thrive in, sun, shade, soil, things like that. You might even want to include instructions that you're going to send to your customer as part of a separate product or a free bonus product that increases the value of this thing you're installing. Obviously, you're installing this thing, you want to do everything you can to get them to succeed. And what does that do for your perceived value, for your ability to actually give value when you're giving this bonus spreadsheet that tells them everything that they need to know, how to use these plants and how to take care of these plants? That's a beautiful, wonderful material because you can reuse it for each person. You're essentially building an info product into your business. And even if you're not going around selling people your spreadsheets, it looks, I mean, it is valuable, but it really increases the value. You're like, oh, I don't know, I'll throw in this free bonus spreadsheet. And that's the sales tactic you want to use. You don't mention it up front and they're like, oh, and then maybe you need to throw it in. Otherwise, they buy it. You're like, hey, by the way, I just want you to know, since you bought this, I'm doing everything I can to make you succeed. This is going to come. Great. Maybe wait till you're about to record a review video with them, something like that. So that's how you want to do this. We're using some of Hormozi's business principles in this video here. But let's move on. You've got your spreadsheet. What's next? You need to understand guilds. When you're designing a food forest system, you're designing guilds oftentimes. And what is a guild? A guild is a microsystem within the food forest system, often centered around a fruit tree or fruit bush. So say, for instance, you've got an apple tree. Then you've got some plants around the apple tree that attract pollinators, some that keep pests away, some that build soil, a little comfrey. Depends on what climate or what area you're in, but the different native wildflowers are going to depend on that. So you got that there. Maybe you've got some fruit bushes, some currants underneath, whatever it may be. You've got a guild. This is a little microsystem. Then you can go and design a food forest out of all these guilds that just kind of fill up the whole space. It can be that simple when you're designing a food forest. You do need to consider how these guilds are going to interact with each other. But that's kind of how simple it can be to design a food forest. You need to understand how these guilds work, though. That is beyond the scope of this video. I've alluded to the different things you're going to need to fill. Like I said, Edible Forest Gardens. It's like $100 book. It's like 1,000 pages. But if you want to understand food forestry, you don't need to read every section of the book to get to this understanding of ecology and how all that works. It's a wonderful book. You're going to fully understand a lot of those things. It's actually going to give you some spreadsheets, funny enough. So you've got your spreadsheets, you've got all these plants, you take sections of the spreadsheet and design them into guilds. And let's say you're doing a 1/4 acre food forest, for instance, and then you design the food forest, you do a map, you do a drawing, whether online or literally a physical drawing, however you want to do it. You do an accompanying spreadsheet. Perhaps you have a drawing, you have the section that says Apple Tree Guild, see spreadsheet. You go to Apple Tree Guild, there's these 7 plants. There's this many of that many plants per square foot. It's 100 square foot. Apple Tree Guild, you're going to have 7 Black-Eyed Susan and 5 comfrey and 3 currants. And 1 like normal sized, medium, small apple tree, whatever it may be. And so then you know what's in that guild, you draw it on the map, you have it in your spreadsheet, you have it all designed up front, and then you go and either stick to that plan or do your best to stick to that plan or use that as a general guideline and then deviate from that. So among these different options, you can see there's this spectrum from just free balling it, which can work on smaller scale. Then at bigger scale, you're going to need at least some degree of pre-planning. Oftentimes, customers will tell me, hey, I trust you. Whatever fruit, or maybe I want this fruit bush, but do whatever. Or maybe they just say, do whatever. I like variety. I like flowers and fruit. Let's get it. And then I just go get it. Other people are going to say, hey, I want a plum tree. Hey, I want an apple tree. Okay, now I know I have to design around a plum and an apple tree. Oftentimes, this is what's going to dictate how this works. So if you've got a certain amount of things the customers want, you design that in, and then you look at what other ecological components are missing in the system. And from that place, you can go and free ball it, go look what those plants are, call them up, say, hey, I've got this list of stuff. I've got 20 plants. What do you have in stock? They're going to say, fuck off. Just come in and check out what we have in stock. I'm not looking through those 20 plants. And then you're going to go and they're going to have 10 of them and you're going to find 5 other plants. You're going to be like, oh, I like this plant. Oh, it's a really good deal. And then so you're just going to go as you go, right? So these are the different options. But the point I'm trying to make is that it might change as you go. You might go and be like, oh man, I don't know what to do with all this. I need to do more research. I don't understand how these things work. And it really is the case that at larger scales, you're going to need to plan more in order for ecological integrity to be established, to establish an ecosystem. But yeah, I'm going to just check out. Let's see. Are there anything else in my notes for this video? That's pretty much it. That's the topic of this video. Thank you very much for watching. Let's see, Thanks for watching. On the next video, not quite sure what's in the next video. We have a couple options, but it's going to be a good one, that's for sure. So thank you for watching. Just a quick short one. Check out the rest of the series if you're interested in how to start a food forest installation business. Peace.